Welcome everyone back this afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to ITBBerlin's Technology Tours and Activities session, TTA as it's fondly known by those who have followed us over the last 4 years. I'm very excited to be back, not least because I'm joined by a fantastic panel. All the gentlemen joining me are experts in their individual fields, and they have agreed to take a few questions of mine. My name is Charlotte Davies. I'm the founder of management consultancy A Bright Approach, and as just indicated, I will be the moderator on this session. So let me introduce you to our panel. First up, we have Douglas Quinby. He is no stranger to anybody interested in tours and activities. He is the co-founder of Arrival. Welcome, Douglas. We also welcome Brad Weber, who we were lucky enough to have on a fantastic panel last year. Brad is president and board member of Grey Line Worldwide. Welcome, Brad. And last but not least, we welcome Emil Martinsek, who is the CMO of GetYourGuide. Gentlemen, welcome to the session.
Thank you.
Now, this session is named Tours and Activities Sustainable Return. This is a big topic, and we may only just scratch the surface. But before I dive into some of my questions, Douglas has very kindly agreed to share some brand new research from Arrival. So I think that without any further ado, I would like to basically hand over to Douglas to set the scene. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Charlotte, and thanks not just for the opportunity to be here with you today, but really a big thanks to you and to the whole team at ITB for the focus that you are putting on, well, what we at Arrival have always believed is one of the most, if not the most important parts of travel and tourism, and that is all of the things that travelers do when they get there, right? Tours, activities, attractions, amusement parks, experiences, all of the things that make up the in-destination experience. That plays a critical role in travel and tourism, and also in travel's impact on local communities, economies, and environments. And so we have a lot to talk about over the next few minutes, and a tough job for Charlotte to steer our conversation and tackle some pretty big topics. So what I'm going to do over the next just few minutes is quickly set the stage with kind of the state of our industry today, the impact of the past couple of years, but also what are the key themes and trends that are going to be defining our industry, driving a lot of the discourse and shifts in our industry as we recover from the last two very challenging years. So first, just to set the stage, the impact of the pandemic has been, well, quite severe within our sector, but also uneven. And this is important as we think about the recovery. So first, here's just a view of how different key sectors of travel and tourism performed during the pandemic, or how they were impacted. Here's the change in gross bookings or revenue for these sectors in 2020. We can see tours, attractions, experiences suffered quite significantly. Now, where are we in the midst of the recovery? Well, 2021, thankfully we saw some positive movement right in the right direction, still well below 2019 levels, but certainly positive indicators about where we could go. However, it's really important to just look a little bit more closely because the different sectors and regions have performed quite differently. So those regions which have a larger kind of domestic market opportunity, which took maybe a more relaxed approach to addressing the pandemic, tended to perform much better than those regions which took a more restrictive approach and were more dependent on cross-border leisure travel. So we can see, for example, the U.S. has recovered much more quickly, for example, than Asia Pacific. We also see some important trends in terms of which sectors within experiences have performed, better or worse. And so we've clearly seen, a movement towards kind of small group, outdoor adventure experiences, activities that could be done closer to home, whereas a lot of the bigger tours and attractions in major kind of urban destinations have struggled over the past couple of years relatively. Now, what's ahead as a result of all of this, and what can we expect over the next few years? So, first, I'll just say, kind of hold on to your hats, like it's time, to get ready. And honestly, if you haven't spent the last 18 to 24 months really thinking about how to get ready, then you may even be a little bit late to the party, because travelers are ready. They're really hungry to get back out there and dive into experiences. Just to give you a sense of what we are seeing from our consumer sentiment and surveying, the intent of travelers to book tours and experiences when they travel has risen dramatically. I have never seen shifts like this in such a short period of time. So this is a very positive indicator. And we're also seeing that travelers are really willing to spend quite a bit more. A big jump, 30+% in intended attraction ticket spend, but also look at tour spend. It's effectively doubled. This is really unprecedented in terms of the demand that is out there. And just to give you a sense of some of the psychology behind this from travelers, when we asked travelers to tell us in 2019, okay, what are some of the factors that drive your selection of, say, one tour or activity versus another? Itinerary or the content of the tour, of course, is number one, followed by price and then some other factors. Then when we look at this for intent for 2022, really big shift. So price basically drops all the way to the bottom. Travelers much more concerned, not just about the content, but also group size, right? Not surprisingly, and also other aspects of the experience. So it's really clear that travelers want a lot more out of their experience in 2022, and they're willing to pay for it. And that's also, I think, an important signal for us in the industry. What do we need to be thinking about for our own experiences? And also, should we be raising prices? And probably the answer there is yes, especially given all of the inflationary pressures that we're seeing from different quarters. Now, the next big theme I want to touch on, and if you've been following our work at all, especially over the past couple of years, then this is a drum I am going to beat again, but not going to stop beating. That's part of our function at Arrival. We've seen a really dramatic, again, one of these unprecedented shifts in consumer behavior. So here's how travelers booked attraction tickets in 2029. I'm just using attraction tickets as one example, but this is applicable to other sectors of experiences, predominantly offline in 2019. We all know how easy it is just to walk up to the ticket office at the museum, grab your paper ticket or voucher, and just walk right in. Well, what was behavior like in 2021? So a really dramatic, a profound shift. And again, I've been tracking things like this for many years in travel and tourism. What we're basically seeing is 10 years of gradual shifts in consumer behavior packed into like an 18 to 24 month period. I, in 20 years of covering this sector, or covering travel in general, have never seen shifts happen like this so quickly. And this is really important for our sector because experiences historically has always lagged the rest of travel and tourism in terms of online booking and even making our experiences online bookable. So we've seen basically 8 to 10 years of growth in online penetration, and this is a really important signal for all of us in this industry. Digital has never been more important, and making our products and experiences easily bookable online as well as discoverable through online distribution, never more important. And the last key theme I want to touch on is the role of experiences as travel returns, and hopefully in a more sustainable fashion. I think we all can recall pre-pandemic, even though it seems like a million years ago in some respects, the most pressing issue facing not just our industry, but travel and tourism overall. Of course, we all know what that was, and that was the incredible challenge facing major destinations around the world with regards to over tourism. And as we think about the return of travel and we look at some of the signals around consumer intent and pent up demand, I think it's pretty clear. It's pretty obvious to me, and I think many others, over tourism is going to return. And I'm concerned, and I think many others should be as well, that it could come back with a vengeance. And so this presents a really important, a profound challenge to not just all of travel and tourism, but I think in particular to our sector, because experience providers, tour operators, and distributors in this sector, we're all on the front lines of impacting our local communities, environments, educating travelers on these issues. So the really key question before all of us is, well, as the industry comes back, as travelers return, what is the right kind of growth here? And one question that I always get and I see across the industry, and I ask this of myself as well as a business owner, as we think about the importance of issues like sustainability, diversity, inclusion. These are important issues, but how can we translate these, or what's the impact on our business, on our revenue, on our bottom line? So I'll just leave you with this one kind of key thing to keep in mind. So just in the U.S., and the U.S. traveler is actually a bit of a kind of a laggard relative to trends from our research that we're seeing in Europe and elsewhere. But 2 out of 3 U.S. travelers under the age of 35 are already making decisions, adjusting their behavior based on what they perceive to be the social and environmental impact of a brand around their travel decisions. So they're asking questions like, is this brand inclusive? What is the impact of this brand on the local economy or on the environment? So they are asking themselves these questions as they make their decisions. And these are questions all of us need to be asking ourselves of our businesses and our role in the return of travel and experiences. Again, in particular, because operators, tour operators, attractions, guides, all of us are on the front lines with the opportunity to impact our local communities, the local environments, and also provide opportunity at a local level for economies all over the world that in many ways is more impactful than other sectors of travel and tourism. So a lot of challenges and big questions before our industry. And Charlotte, the challenge is now to you to try to pack all of these big topics into the next 20 minutes or so of what's going to be a really fascinating conversation. So thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Douglas. That is indeed, wow. If anybody can get some serious research over the line in 10 minutes, it's you. Thank you very much. It certainly sets the scene. Now, I'm happy to also invite, of course, Emil and Brad next. There's a lot to digest, but we'll dive straight into it. Emil, maybe if I could start with you, please. I'm thinking, what destinations and which products are we seeing coming back first from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte, for hosting this. When we look at travel, particularly the first couple months of this year, certainly the trends that Douglas highlighted around more, secondary experiences, secondary destinations, outdoor adventure, definitely was true last year. But even as we go into 2022, I think some of the premonitions around over tourism coming back are there. Now we're seeing even increased traction in cities like New York, which are up over 90% versus 2019 on GetYourGuide's platform. San Francisco up 94%, Paris up 75%. So you're seeing a return to the cities as people become more comfortable with the state of tourism and travel sort of as COVID winds down. And I expect that to continue. In terms of products, we've also seen a shift back into attraction tickets. We recently relaunched with Prague Castle and sold 700 tickets in just a few days. So the demand for attractions, the historical, iconic figures is still there. And so I think, what consumers were yearning for pre-crisis and during the crisis, now they have an opportunity to explore it. And as Douglas said, it's now our responsibility to figure out how to deliver the value and the customers safely, reliably into these historic attractions, iconic attractions, as well as to these unforgettable moments of interaction with guides and experiences across the world.
Of course, as Douglas said, we're in for an interesting ride, and it's definitely about the sector itself being very, very ready for what's coming. It's coming back, I believe, also with a vengeance, because there's all this up-pent demand. Brad, tell us a little bit about your experiences, and as we're coming out of it, around that question on what's next, what's first, where are your group of customers going?
Yeah, and I have to say, first of all, thanks for having us. It's great to be back. I wish we were in person, but this is the next best thing. We're tracking, what we're seeing is tracking exactly with Douglas's research and what Emil said. I think, and of course, we're speaking just for ourselves from the Gray Line point of view. But during the pandemic, spot on. A lot of our markets are smaller. They're regionally focused, smaller group sizes. Those did very well during the pandemic. But what also did well for us during the pandemic was some closer regional destinations where people could escape. So we saw very strong demand and activity from the U.S. to Mexico all throughout the pandemic. But recently, what we've seen is exactly what Emil was pointing out. We're seeing a return to more traditional demand patterns where, the bigger cities, whether it's London, Paris, Rome, Vegas, San Francisco, Orlando, and kind of a resurgence of this idea that, I've been locked up for the last 2 years. I don't know that I can take my freedom of movement for granted anymore. So I want to make sure I'm living the bucket life, that I'm checking off those things that I absolutely want to see. So we're seeing very high demand for things like Neuschwanstein, the Grand Canyon, the wine country, Windsor, Bath, and Stonehenge, those more traditional iconic attractions that people want to make sure they see when they're traveling to a destination. So I'd say, we're seeing the exact same things, and I think that's very encouraging, right? I think that now that we are all kind of feeling that, wow, maybe I do have an opportunity to travel how I want to. I'm going to make sure I do things right, because I don't know that this freedom is always going to be there. So I think we're in for a really good year, pending any new crazy things happening.
Thank you very much, Douglas. I'll bring you in a second, but I want to sort of move over to a related question. And Douglas, I'm glad we ended your presentation in and around the consumer changing behaviors that we are seeing. We hear about it, we read about it. I tend to be a tiny little bit cynical sometimes, and I know that we're all hoping that after we've been out and about and looked at nature in a different way in the last couple of years, that we'd come back. But I'd really like to. I really hope that there are some examples that you can give us of how you see the consumer expectations changing. Let me hear something solid rather than just wishful thinking. Douglas, maybe anything that springs to mind where you'll say, we see this, we know a particular age group, if we start with one, at least is really concerned about this.
Well, so I'd say perhaps, first, the most, obvious thing around this is we're, clearly seeing travelers making, adjustments around the types of experiences that they want to have. So, for example, I think of this as like the older days of kind of seeing and hearing, right? So being on the bus and seeing the attraction in the distance and having the guide or the audio guide tell you all the facts about it. That's still, super interesting. But in this environment today, especially, travelers, they want to not just see and hear, but they want to feel it. They want to taste. They want to touch. They want to meet somebody who can share, a story about the experience. So, just one, obvious example is the extraordinary rise of culinary tourism and food tours. That's a category, I, as an industry professional, hadn't even heard about until maybe 10 years ago. Now it's one of the top trending categories, and we're seeing operators all over the world explore even ways we're not food tour operators to incorporate really innovative culinary touches into their experience, because culinary is a way to experience a local culture and connect with people.
And I guess feeling and touching rather than looking from afar gets you a little bit closer, and maybe thus, also you care a little bit more. Emil, maybe a little example from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think the food tour one highlights the shift very well, which is the desire to do more than just kind of check the boxes and walk to the next thing. But even in the attractions that we work with, we're doing a lot of work, for example, with the Vatican at the moment. And, the shift that we're seeing from pure ticketing just to kind of race to the Sistine Chapel and go out is declining in exchange for a more guided and personal perspective of the vastness of the Vatican museums. And even looking for alternative ways to experience the wonder of the Vatican, like the papal villas that are outside of the core Vatican City. And again, this offers, I think, a lot of opportunities, to the point earlier of how do you bring travel sustainably back. It creates new opportunities for revenue generation and for growth for, both classic attractions as well as, tour companies who are operating on the ground to actually help get customers into and immersed in the experience of the destination. And it's not just, good business from really connecting people to destinations, but it's good business from revenue side as well.
Yeah, and it's broader. What we're offering is much broader. Brad, and I have another related questions for you, Brad, on top of that, but maybe just a quick one from you.
Sure. I think it's really interesting seeing how consumer behavior has kind of evolved throughout the pandemic. And what we're seeing, there's a lot more spontaneity, but there's a lot of early researching, but late booking, right? So people are thinking about it well in advance, but I think we've all been so trained that, things change minute to minute, that you know what you want to do, when you want to do it, but you're hesitant to pull the trigger. So we're seeing a lot more bookings much closer in. They definitely want things to be easier. They want to be ensured that if plans change, they can cancel. But one of the things that has surprised us in a very positive way is we're seeing much more pre-trip engagement from people that have booked with us. They're reaching out, they're going deep into the reviews, and they're actually reaching out to us and saying, hey, look, is there any way that I can guarantee that Emil or Douglas is going to be my guide because I really want to travel with them? Or we're seeing even in some of our wine tours where they're saying, hey, is there any way we could see, Vineyard X as opposed to Vineyard Y? So one of the things we've learned during the pandemic and with our reduced staff sizes, we can be a lot more agile. We're a lot more agile. We can make decisions on the fly and do some adaptations to meet almost on a group by group basis, really customizing itineraries that are kind of based off a core structure. But it's really fun for us to see how engaged people are pre-trip when they're thinking about it and actually working with us to help shape their experience when they're on the ground. Because like I said before, this is a one shot. I don't know how many times most families go to Paris or to London, but this could be your only trip for many years, and they want to make sure they get it right.
Can I ask a related question here across the board? Do you see that people are extending their stays? Are they trying to take a longer break than they did pre-pandemic? Is there anything out there that indicates that, Brad?
We don't have great optics on that because we don't have the customer's full trip. We see what they're doing relative to their experiences. So, if we get one or two or three experiences during a customer's journey in a specific destination, that's an indicator of how long they're staying. But unfortunately, we just don't have the bookends, right? Like I don't have their flight arrival and their flight departure. So it's hard for me to comment. Yeah. Maybe Emil or Douglas have better visibility.
I'm just thinking this is really where we are again touching on the sustainability issue, right? It's all right to have smaller trips and shorter trips, but also the idea that we might just go for a little bit longer and immerse ourselves a little bit deeper when we're there.
Well, maybe. Personal anecdote, years past, I would take my family to Europe for, a long weekend or a week. This year we're going for a month. So if I'm any indication, then hopefully people are traveling less, but staying longer.
Yeah. Emil, are you seeing anything on that? Just maybe briefly from you?
No, not in particular. Sort of like Brad, we don't have the full optics on the bookends, although we do have some good data on, multiple activities. And we do see that, people are booking more when they travel. As we look at our return, we're seeing about, 40% growth in revenue per customer as they travel on our platform. And that's spread over, of course, you need more time to do that. But it's, we're still seeing concentration of actual bookings occurring on Friday, on Saturday, on Sunday. So we haven't seen a drastic shift into kind of, midweek or longer stays. But of course, we continue to watch these patterns and obviously will advise and work with our partners as we see the trends emerge.
I want us, just as we almost begin to come to a close, next year we're going to get a whole hour live at Berlin, that's for sure. I can guarantee it almost, even if I haven't had it signed off yet. But what I want to just really touch on as well is major technology trends that are aiding our sector. Douglas obviously touched on it a little bit, but can you, from, again, Emil, maybe we start with you from your perspective, which technology trends are really going to help the sector going forward, apart from the obvious ones maybe?
Yeah, well, I think, again, it all goes back to what are consumers demanding? And as Brad said, there's this sort of last minute afraid of things changing, and therefore consumers really want that flexibility. And to be able to book closer to last minute, to be able to be flexible, our partners and our other attractions that we work with, what we're really focusing on is how do they deliver more real-time availability, pricing, and content such that we give consumers that flexibility. And so when we look at trends over the next year or two, it's how do we help our industry move to what the hotel industry or flight industry have done before, which has become much more dynamic and much more, essentially, for lack of a better word, last minute. Because I think that it empowers us to give consumers what they want, and then that grows the industry in response.
Yeah, Charlotte, I would just jump in on, I think what Emil said here is so important. I think it's really key to keep in mind, like this industry, like Brad, for example, in Gray Line represents one of the largest multi-destination operators with some of the largest some of the individual franchisees are extremely large and sophisticated operators. But there's this industry represents upwards of 1 million operators, mostly small businesses, solo entrepreneurs. There's still a lot of work to be done just to get them to use modern reservation software and to connect to platforms in a digital, connected way, like with GetYourGuide. And so one of the key issues is with connectivity and things like what GetYourGuide and others are doing to really advance and encourage operators to use reservation systems to connect via API as opposed to pen and paper is still a major effort that the industry is pursuing.
Yeah, Brad, maybe a few last words from you on the technology trends.
Yeah, I think one of the most fun things during the pandemic is watch all the conversation around moonshots in technology as they relate to tours and activities. And really, we need to solve the fundamentals. We need to make sure that if somebody is really wanting to do something last minute, that the systems are connected all the way, no matter what channel that customer is coming through. So we spent a lot of time during the pandemic just improving kind of those back end efficiencies to make sure that the customer journey is as frictionless as possible, even to the extent where, we've really boosted our connectivity program. And looking at Emil, we're one of the top 3 connectivity partners with GetYourGuide. So, when the industry is ready to deliver more functions, more features that flow through the consumer, we want to make sure that we're there on the leading edge of this and not playing catch up. And a lot of our operators in Gray Line, they are on the smaller side. So, watching that digital adaptation and adoption from the smaller operators, I think that's key to have a healthy ecosystem throughout all of tours and activities. I really do. So, we're not solving moonshot problems. We need to make what we have today work better.
Absolutely. And we need to guide, everybody in the sector actually to come along with us, because the bigger brands, of course, are sort of at the forefront of everything that's changing and the rapidness with which it is changing from a technology perspective. I'm mortified to say that it's over, but it was wonderful to see you. And thank you so much for participating. I know that you guys welcome feedback. And so I will say to our audience, these guys are all on social media, so reach out. I think together, let us continue the conversation. Let's aid the recovery for our sector and beyond. And let's try to be sensible about all of the choices that we make. Also in my closing remarks, I'd like to mention that ITBBerlin has partnered with Booking Kit, that's another one, Booking Kit, and on April the 7th, Booking Kit will actually be hosting Experience Connect 22. It's free to attend for anybody who cares about the tours and activities sector. I know maybe even Douglas from Arrival is going to be back with some more research for this particular event, so we urge you all to join us for that. And details, of course, as always, can be found on social media. So my last words are to say thank you, Douglas, Brad, and Emil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you to ITBBerlin for organizing this session. I hope to see you all live next year. But for now, I'm going to hand back over to the lovely Kati at the studio. Thank you again.